All right, pleased to be joined, friend of the podcast, right? John Buccigross from ESPN. Is this your second crack at the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, or is it the third? It's at least two, is it not, John?
I don't remember either if there were two. Was there one?
Wow.
I just
There was at least one.
There was one. Let's hope this one goes better.
Okay.
And I think it was from your parents' home at the time.
Yes,
that's
exactly. It looks like the hostage shed. Yeah.
Well, you're enjoying some much needed downtime, a day or two anyway, right? You're in Florida.
Yep.
The Frozen Four kicks up on Thursday in Tampa Bay with the semifinals. That's Minnesota and Boston U, Michigan and Quinnipiac. Such an exciting tournament. And I know that it's one that's been near and dear to your heart, John, for so many years.
Yeah, it's my 10th one. First time I experienced it was at I worked in Providence, Rhode Island. My first job was on Cape Cod, about 5 years, and I got a little break going to Providence, and it was a great 2 years while I was there. And in '95, that's where the Frozen Four was. Now it's only NHL arenas, NHL cities, but back then it wasn't quite at that heights yet. So I went over to cover it for our local news, Channel 12, and I was just blown away by the pageantry, the doubleheader Thursday, bands, people walking around outside in Brian Smolinski, Michigan State sweaters, and with schools not even there. They're there. It's just kind of a pilgrimage they make every year. So then to be able to, fast forward whenever that was, 18 years later and get to call it. And now, it's a lot of fun. This one's a really good one this year. I always root for kind of three brand names and like a Cinderella, and that's what we got with BU, Minnesota, and Quinnipiac in Michigan. So I think it's a perfect spot and a great place to host a championship. South Florida, Tampa does a great job. They host Super Bowls and national championships and Stanley Cups, of course, when the Lightning make it. And now the Frozen Four for the third time, and third time in 10 years, and my second time here already.
Nice.
How do the schools travel? How do the fans travel? Or is it? Yeah. It's not just locals that come, right?
You certainly get, like I said, people who come every year, no matter what. Some locals, and like you said, the schools. And no one travels like North Dakota. They were here in 2016 in Tampa when they won it. That's the last time they won it. Brock Besser and Drake Kajula, and that was a Troy Stetcher, really good team. Schmaltz was on that team as well. And they just took over the city. So no one travels like North Dakota. But I expect certainly with Michigan and Minnesota and BU, those alums have money, so they can fly short notice and come on down. So I expect Minnesota probably the strongest. My guess would be of the four. But you'll see pockets of colors throughout the arena. The bands will be here, and so it should be a full packed house. And should be pretty evenly distributed, I would think. It'll be curious. There's always someone who's a little louder than the others, and it'll be curious to see who it is this year.
When you get the access, you guys get access to the players. You have your sit-downs coming up here. What's changed over the last half dozen years or so with the players, if anything, really?
Yeah, well, they don't quite know who Barry Melrose is anymore. When I first started doing this with Barry back in 2005, I did regionals for 8 years, maybe 7 years before I started doing the Frozen Four. I just did the regionals. So that's, he'd come in and it was like a rock star because those guys literally grew up with him. Then, of course, we lose the NHL in 2004, and that slowly we start losing a generation of fan who watches the game on TV. And then Barry's only Sports Center, and young kids just don't watch Sports Center like we did. So he went from being Elvis Presley to maybe Elvis Costello. I don't know, maybe that's one way to put it. So it's kind of funny. But the kids themselves, they're still great kids. You can tell they're raised right, and they're very polite, and it's a great way to get to know them for sure. Now that when we got introduced to the NHL last year, it was great, for me to walk into the arenas. A lot, the third of the league played college. So it's nice that they already know me and they have this, some of them have a relationship. And so between that and growing up on social media with the different things I've done there, luckily, they come right up to me and they say hi, whether it's Austin Matthews or Justin Hall or Cole Caulfield. They come right over. So it makes it much easier for me. And it's been a great perk now that I'm covering the NHL again. But the kids are great. I love sitting down and talking. We'll do that tomorrow. About 5 or 6 kids and the coaches. It's great to know the coaches. Again, great to know the kids. You get a peek into their personality, which helps. Again, once they enter the league, I kind of have a database of who they are a little bit.
So you're around the table. Do you have like a little thing of chicken parm in the middle for the guys? Like,
I know we should
you
do that.
should.
We should, because it gets hungry after team 3 and 4 come in. It's an all day thing, like 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So we get hungry.
Such an impactful event, though, right? From a world perspective here now, from a hockey standpoint, clearly, but no shortage of star power
Yep.
in this week's semifinals. I mean, if you look at the Hobey Baker finalists, John, you've got Adam Fantilli from Michigan, you've got 2 Minnesota players in Logan Cooley and Matthew Knies. I mean, talk about setting up a tremendous competitive atmosphere with both those semifinal games.
Yeah, they certainly, obviously, Fantilli won't be in the league until he gets drafted second this June. But the other two will probably play next week, I would think.
Yeah.
And there's more that will play next. There's over 40 draft picks in this Frozen Four, so there's a lot of future NHL players that'll be playing in this tournament. Like you said, it's not quite best on best, but it has that flavor of an Olympics, of a World Cup. It's a hockey event, of the World Juniors. It just has that kind of pageantry and event and tradition, which gives it a lot of juice, some hockey juice. And certainly hope a lot of people watch on ESPN2 and up at TSN. I think it's TSN2 maybe as well. They have the Pro Tour. So yeah, it's just a good hockey environment with a lot of juice, a lot of electricity. These kids want to win it. You're a champion for life. That's what I love about this year's class, and especially the high end guys. You can tell they're all in. A lot of guys have 1 foot out the door. I think we saw that with Harvard. Not a surprise. They got blown out of the building. And when you have 1 foot out the door, it's not going to work that way. And that's why I loved about Cale Makar. I think Cale Makar helped re-energize the commitment. He was all in. He came back for a second year. First of all, didn't have to. And then while he was here and while he was at UMass that second year, he was all in. Lost in the championship game to Minnesota Duluth in Buffalo, but still he was all in. I like to see that with Cooley and Knies and Fantilli. He seems to be all in. He wants to be a Michigan man for life, even though it's a short 9-month. I sometimes I went to college for 4 years and an alum and everything. These kids show up for about 9 months and suddenly they're a life, But if they get that degree, then that's fine. Then they deserve it. But so I like how this group seems to be all in. And especially now that you're this far, you might as well give it a good 4 or 5 days. And then you're in the league next week.
Okay, so of those guys in the league next week, of course, Fantilli, as you mentioned, won't be because he's got to wait to get drafted. Luke Hughes, I assume, is on his way to New Jersey. We'll start there. What are the Devils getting with Luke Hughes, aside from a player with great bloodlines and by all accounts, just about every piece of the game, pretty much NHL ready?
Yeah, he could have played last year, I think, and ran the power play. He's very slight, so going in the corners against some of these forecheckers can be difficult. But you know how those guys skate now; they turn around. He turns around and he puts his back and he takes peeks and he can make moves, so he doesn't have to just plaster himself again. He can figure angles and curves to avoid contact. It'll get it once in a while. He's a little bigger than his brother Jack, so he's little, but he's slight, but. It was good to come back and gain some more weight and get stronger. But yeah, he could have ran the power play last year. He can run it now. He's a true savant, and he's not quite Dougie Hamilton in terms of Dougie's really arrived as an offensive pro, 20 goals and powerful shots. But in terms of running that power play, a left-handed shot, he'll be able to do it next week. He'll be an impactful guy next week. You'll notice him next week, and it's good. He's an electric player, and he'll only be better with better players. That's the thing. These high-end guys are even better with better players, especially a guy like Hughes and Cooley, who are real creative, magicians with the puck. I thought Cooley should have went first last year. I think he's going to end up being the best guy in that top 5. And he's going to be electric as well, especially if he finds the right winger. Knies is the perfect player for him. That's who Arizona needs to find a Knies or, someone like him. And forwards that certainly Cooley can turn into 20 goal scorers. That's what he can do.
Okay, so you bring up Matthew Knies. Of course, I'm not sure if you're aware, there's a lot of fandom around the Toronto Maple Leafs. So should Knies be the captain next week, or should he wait a year? What are we going to get from him? I'm really interested in him because the hope, I don't know so much of the team, but of those that follow, is that he can jump into a top 6 role. I think that's almost impossible, but maybe I'm way off. Just given the speed of the game at this time of year, it's different than coming in October.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think it's easier coming in now because they've had that full year and they're on a downhill sprint.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? You know him better than certainly than I do.
Yeah, he'll come in fresh because they haven't played a lot of games because they've had a lot of time off. Especially the Big Ten, they don't play as many games as some of the other conferences, best 2 out of 3 and things like that. So he can play fast. He's skilled down low. I think he can play in the top 6, like you said. Does he have 100% defensive responsibility, and can you trust him that way? That's something the coaches will probably need a couple games to look at. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of time. I'm sure they would have preferred a month, not a week, until they're going to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that they would be careful. But you might as well do it though, right? The last week of the season, that's the time to do it. They're locked in. So put them if you want it. If you see them as a top 6 answer, they're very good top 6, obviously, very strong. I don't know why they wouldn't have to do that, but if they want to, just to give it a shot, they certainly can. But yeah, he will be a high impact guy. Obviously, I think he is amongst the bet. I think he'll play on the team in the playoffs. I think he's that good as long as he's not over his head defensively. And that's something that Sheldon Keefe has to look at quickly and digest quickly. I don't know. And I'm sure, again, Dubas went to the regionals last year. He went again this year. So he's seen him in person. And I'm sure he can see parts of his game from his own eye that, okay, yeah, he can do this. So I'm sure he's already formed that opinion, is my guess. But yeah, then you put him with people in practice and then put him in a game and see how it goes.
Is he, would he be considered like a modern day power forward?
Yeah, yes, that's a good way to put it. Because he's not like when we grew up, it's Cam Neely coming down the wing, powdering slap shots. But here, you take the puck. I'll just go to the net, Craig Janney, and then you find me. Neely didn't want the puck. Right. Knies will probably want the puck down low, like around that. He can make those really cool James Van Riemsdyk moves. He's a more like, remember when he played in New Hampshire, and you could just see him around the net. And he wasn't as quick and fast as he became. It was a little bit slower, and that's the same with Knies. And Knies is already pretty quick and magic, like around the net, those little tight little moves, which why I think he can play around the cage with good players, because he'll get rebounds. They'll find him on those short passes if he knows how to open up and get the shooting in the shooting position so he can finish quickly, which he'll have to do obviously at the next level. That's something he probably hasn't had to do at this level. He can just get it, make a move, make a half 360, 180 fake, boom, boom. This is a little different. So those are the things that you won't see until you put him in there. Like, does he open up quickly? Is he too close? Does he back up enough to get himself a shooting position so he can pick a corner? Like, those are little things, as you mentioned, Ray, playing fast. Not so he can play fast. He's as fast as anybody. He'll be one of the faster guys, but can his brain play with his feet at that level at the most important time of the year?
We like the high end guys take all the oxygen, right? Yep. Like everybody's looking at them. The last couple of weeks have all been about, for the NHL, team loses. They have these college free agents, and it's a swarm on these kids. And they're all looking for which team has got a path that I could sign and maybe get games right away, or
burn a year off.
Right? Burn a year, but also, is there a road for me there? Like if I'm a centerman, I don't know that I'm really excited to sign with the Edmonton Oilers right now, because there seems to be a roadblock for the next forever in front of me there. So who are some of the guys, Bucci, if you can, that have signed, college free agents that have signed and jumped to, whether it's an American League team already or to the NHL for a couple quick games, that you might think have a real chance?
Yeah, Hunter McCown was probably the highest end skill guy who was available, right? Ends up signing with Columbus. Probably got a wink. You'll play this year and you'll play next year. Like you're going to play this many games. I'm going to give you 20 next year, or 15, 10, right? Yeah. And that's important. Someone like him, that gives him a chance. Okay, you give me the rest of this year, and then give me the full summer, getting the workout training camp, and give me a good 25% of the season next year. And that's a great way. That's a good bargaining chip to have, because they're cheap labor, obviously. If you mess up a draft, you can kind of make up for it. A lot of these guys are organizational depth guys in the end. There's a mythology around them. It's kind of like the minor league baseball player when we were kids, Ray, and, who's this team? Who's this guy the Red Sox are going to call up? Because you don't see him play, especially back then. There was no video. It was just stats in the sporting news. And it was like, oh, boy, that guy hit 29 homers in Pawtucket. I wonder if he can do that at Fenway, And so there is some mythology with some of these players as well, because there's not a lot of video. The video isn't always the best quality. I mean, Jason Poland led the country in goals, but he's probably a bottom six, knows what's important, depth guy who can also be an AHL leader, right? In American League, you can bring him along. These guys are already approaching their early to mid 20s, so they can make a good living doing that and be a hockey guy for life. And so he picked Colorado, right? Because that's a team. There'll always be fishing for cheap bottom six guys, right? And and you can really make your mark. Then you make your mark in the league, and then you might pop in suddenly get 18, 20 goals. Then you're UFA because you're a certain age and out. But maybe I can sign a 4-year, $12 million deal. That's perfect for and then it's all that hard work paid off. But like you said, right place, right time, right situation, right line mates, get a good year or two, and then boom, you can cash that in. But most of them, it's not going to work out. It's a depth position, and Ryan McAllister left Western early. Again, a kind of a high end guy, but body wise, that's one reason why these guys are available, because they don't have elite bodies in terms of strength when they were 18, 19, and it takes time to build it up. Great heads, good sticks, but will they have the physical body to make it work at the next level? And that would be the question. With him going forward, is can that happen? I mean, we had back when Michigan State was in the tournament, we had their regional, and Torrey Krug was the free agent who everybody wanted, and obviously he's turned into a nice career, almost won the Stanley Cup, made a lot of money. And so that's, you get lucky with a guy like that, and that's worth it, because like you said, that makes up for a draft. And the thing is too, these kids like to play in big cities. Like, they're not going to go play in some cities. They do want to play in New York, live in Chicago, live in Boston. So that's part of their decision too, is where to live.
The last thing I'll like for me right now is you have this, because of where you went, you grew up and you went to college, and the Columbus Blue Jackets have a warm place in the Bucci heart. What would Connor Bedard mean to the Columbus Blue Jackets? Like right now, they were so close to being a good team, and then they just got the chair kicked out from under them, and they got to start over again. And like, is what you've seen? I worry about Bedard, that the hype around him is unfair to Connor. That people are like, is he Connor McDavid? Right. Well, nobody's Connor McDavid. He's just not.
Right.
So. Right. What does that mean? What would that mean in Columbus? Because they've done a nice job of getting themselves right into the mix of it.
Yeah, yes, they have. It'd be because of the hype, as you mentioned. It'd be the biggest moment in franchise history, literally to date. Obviously, they worked hard to get Rick Nash, and that ended up being a very good move. You're talking about a borderline Hall of Fame player. Might still get that look as time goes on. He scored goals, and it was hard to score goals. Freak athlete. My goodness, his highlight, the most underrated highlight package of goals, I think, in NHL history. Like this, sick. It's like Dominique Wilkins with dunking. Rick Nash was to some of these goals he scored with the reach and the length and everything. So, and he's turned into be a pillar. Got his number retired. He's there. So, Rick Nash is still the dude. But because of the hype around Bedard, and then to put him with Gaudreau, he'd probably score 40 goals next year playing with Gaudreau. I think that's why he's not Connor McDavid, but he's a goal scorer. He's going to come in and score goals right away. There's no doubt in my mind he will score goals at the next level, and that's the greatest skill to have. And so that's the can't miss part of him. Now, is he going to get 50, 60? Is he going to be a 35, 40 guy? We don't know, like you said, but he seems like so. It would be. I think it would really be on the heels of Gaudreau. I think the fan base is smart enough to realize. Because Werenski is back, and obviously put him with Gaudreau, and then it becomes a pretty deep. And Boone Jenner's an underrated pro as well. He slots in the proper position. Suddenly they got a team who can maybe contend for the playoffs next year. I didn't think they were fully healthy, so that's able to grow. But yeah, it would be a big one. It's fun to do it on Twitter. It's kind of a bit now with doing different gifs whenever they lose or whether they win, ruining their best chances. But it's fun, and people seem to like it, and so it's fun to dream, and that's what's about the draft. The draft's about dreams, and what if we get this guy? What would that look like? And that's a great part of sport.
Well, it's such an important part of the college hockey season. Obviously, John, the Frozen Four semifinals Thursday. The national championship is on Saturday, so your plate is full, not just of chicken parm, but some unbelievable college hockey. So we appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Love the show. Thanks so much. And we'll see you guys out during the playoffs, hopefully.